All right, so this is pretty much going to be the end of the presidency unit on 2.2b, our second part of Unit 2, largest section of the entire AP course. And we're looking here at power that the president's trying to protect, and then Congress trying to take power away from the president. So that's really what the theme is of this one: is Congress trying to check a presidential president with power. And the first one here, executive privilege, is the president trying to hold on to that power. And we've talked a lot about how the presidency, since the founding, I should say, has really gained more power informally through media, through executive orders, through executive agreements, through signing statements, through all the all just like social media. This has really helped the president gain power, and now executive privilege is kind of part of that. All right, so what this is, it's the privilege which is claimed by the president. Executive privilege is a privilege claimed by the president of the ability to withhold information from Congress or the courts in the name of public interest. It's a privilege claimed by the president that they have the right to withhold information from Congress or from a court in the name of the public interest. So, for example, maybe it's a wartime situation, and so the president says, "Well, I'm not going to share this with Congress right now because if somebody leaks this, then it could put troops in harm's way." And by the way, leaking means like, a congressperson finds out about it, they don't like it, so they tell someone at the Washington Post or they give a document to the New York Times or something like that. And then all of a sudden this is out. For example, President Obama definitely didn't want anybody to know that he was getting ready to give the order to go in and take out Osama bin Laden in 2011. Like that's something that you wouldn't want that sort of operation known about. The most famous incident of executive privilege, not the first, but the most famous example, was when President Nixon withheld taped conversations from Congress. This was in relationship to the Watergate scandal, that Nixon had actually recorded conversations about the break-in at Watergate. And remember, Watergate had some offices in it, and some of them were for a psychologist. And so Nixon had some of his stooges go over, break in, and try to find out embarrassing information about Democrats. And later, he finds out it happened. Matter of fact, I don't even think Nixon even knew about the initial act, but then later finds out about it, and he talks on tape and records it in the White House because he was paranoid, kept these tapes, and on the tapes he's telling people basically to obstruct justice and basically lie about it, which, by the way, that's bad. If you're telling someone not to cooperate with police and lie to them, you are obstructing justice, and that's a violation of law. So Nixon did that. Congress comes forward and says, we want the tapes, when they found out about the tapes. And the courts, Nixon goes to court, says, executive privilege, no, can't do this. Eventually, the Supreme Court rules. SCOTUS, remember, is Supreme Court of the United States, and they rule that, well, there's no executive privilege in a criminal case. Like, if the president's actually being, investigated for crime, he can't claim executive privilege. Now, with matters having revolving around defense or security, then the president is much more likely to get away with it. The first time executive privilege was ever used was actually our first president, George Washington. In 1796, the House of Representatives requested documents related to his negotiations of the Jay Treaty. And remember, negotiations with foreign leaders is basically it's what we call a plenary power, meaning like there's almost absolute power, like there's no limit to it. And Washington was like, no, I'm not giving you the documents, so go scram. And that kind of started this idea that, like, there are certain things the president can do, and Congress just going to have to deal with it. Now, there are other things that the president has power to, and Congress has attempted to limit the power of the president through law. All right, so let's look at those things. First thing is the 22nd Amendment, 2.52, 22nd Amendment. And the 22nd Amendment, flip, was attempt to restrict the power of the presidency. And it was to limit the president to 2 terms, plus potentially 2 years of another president, up to 2 years of another president. So think 22nd, 2 terms plus 2 years. 22nd equals 2 terms plus 2 years, 2. Isn't that really cute how that works? Thank you. And so, for example, if the president has a year left in office, president dies, that the vice president becomes president for that 1 year, and he can still run 2 more times for president reelection, and it would serve a total of 9 years. But if a president has 2.5 years left and a president dies, and the vice president takes over and has 2.5 years left, then the president can only run for reelection once, because they can do 2 terms plus 2 years. But if you do more than 2 years of another term, then you only can run one more time. So yeah, that's how it works. So it could end up being 6 years to 10 years max. That's the limit on the 22nd Amendment. And again, this was because FDR during before and during World War II, won 4 terms in office, which would have been 16 years had FDR not died. So when Republicans got control of the House and Senate after World War II, they immediately passed the 22nd Amendment, and it flew through most states and passed. And part of the problem is the president gains tremendous power from being an incumbent, and being able to run foreign policy for a lot of years, and so and plus all the running the executive departments, and so therefore the idea was that the president was just too big for his britches, and we need to put a brake on things. All right, forget that chart. All right, War Powers Act 2.53. War Powers Act 2.53. This is another attempt by Congress to limit the power of the presidency. And you can probably tell that it has to do with his war power. So this has to do with the president's power as commander in chief. Flip over backside. This was right after Vietnam. It's 1973, and it's an attempt to limit the presidential power. Just like the court said that executive privilege has limits, like president can't use executive privilege and withhold things from Congress, if it has to do with a criminal trial. Now we have it, and then we limited the president's term with 22nd. Now we're limiting the president's power when it comes to its commander in chief role. So if the president has military action, whether it's covert, meaning secret, or whether it's not, the president must report military action formally within 48 hours. The president has 48 hours to report military action to Congress. Now remember, Congress can't stop the president from engaging in a military action. The president can do that. However, Congress could rescind the funding for it. Congress could make a bill and say, guess what? No money that Congress gives to the Department of Defense can be used to do X. And so they could stop it like that. Here's the problem. The president can veto the law. So it would require over 67 votes in both houses to override it. That's pretty rare in our divided country to have one party control it, pretty substantial, especially when the other president of another party is in power. It probably wouldn't happen. And then the other part of this law, the Wars Powers Act, and this is the most significant part, the president can't deploy troops longer than 60 days without congressional approval. So if the president put troops in Iran, I mean, that wouldn't happen, but let's say it happened, then within 60 days, if Congress does nothing, then the troops have to actually withdraw those troops. Has to withdraw them after 6 days. If Congress approves, then they can continue. All right. So that's that. All right, cool. That's the last 3 things on executive branch, and you guys need to study these, and we'll have a test coming up soon. Thank you.